What's his movie? Do not record.
What's your 2 second? It's not even elevator pitch. It's just like it's like
yeah. So
I think we used to call these mighty minute reviews.
Yeah.
So you want to bring it back real quick?
Yeah, sure. So the issue I have with Zack Snyder is that he doesn't know how to land the plane. He has all of these ideas.
Yes.
The art direction is beautiful. And I get really excited for the first 45 minutes of the movie. And then it spirals out into all directions that a movie possibly could. And it doesn't bring anything home. And
he also hates women.
Yeah,
it's definitely you can make an argument. I would say he's
Zack Snyder hates women.
Maybe not as much as Guy Ritchie hates women, but he hates women. You know, Guy Ritchie's a little bit worse. But no, I think that Zack Snyder has this. Yes, I want to say I agree with that. I think that would be that. We'll just have a longer version of that comment be our discussion of the movie.
That's pretty much my.
She's gonna go watch it again now.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure you can't wait to.
Steve's been just spinning up my feedback.
I've been trolling her all week. Like I've been sending her like theory videos on YouTube of what Army of the Dead really means, and like the aliens and the robot zombies, and she's just like losing her mind.
But the nerve. Okay, I'm ready to.
Yeah, I will bow out. Also, Steve's stealing the good light for the ring light, so I need to step away. But it was lovely chatting with you.
That was great.
Good to see you.
Yeah, see you guys.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Army of the Dead's on Netflix if you want to pull it up.
I feel like our Erin's had a very similar.
It sounds. I would imagine so.
You might throw a Nikki onto that same pile. Yeah.
All three wives are just like, nah.
Well, it's weird. It puts me in the awkward position of like sitting there watching a movie that I'm not really enjoying that much and defending it in some strange way, because it's like I'm like, well, it's kind of what Zack Snyder does, or it's what you kind of expect from this type of movie. But I'm also sitting there going like, why am I being an apologist for a guy who I do think is his flaws are as on display as his gifts in almost anything that he does. So.
Yeah, it's weird stuff, man.
So have we started the show? That was the softest.
I don't know if that's a start or if that's a tease or
that's a cold open.
Cold open. Yeah.
Let's get it going.
Yeah.
All right. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Schmovie podcast. This is episode number 301. We are on to a new era of Schmovie. Yeah. We've crossed the 300 mark. If you haven't checked out that episode, please go back to last week's episode and give it a listen, give it a watch on YouTube. However you're following us or keeping up with us. If you missed it, it's worth your time. It was a blast to do that episode. And again, thank you to everybody, the friends of the pod that called in and hung out with us for a little bit to celebrate 300 episodes and 10 years of this podcast. Here with everyone, as always, my name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm here with
Ron
and John.
And yeah, man, we're gonna kick this episode off. I'm sure we're gonna go over some news and some maybe some trailer talk, because some cool trailers have dropped since we last officially recorded. But as a little teaser for the episode, we're gonna kind of be going through a couple of the major releases that have come out since we did episode 300. We kind of banked that episode. So there's a couple of movies that have been released since you've heard from us that are a little more timely. So I think we're going to go through some of them here. I know we're going to be talking a little bit about Army of the Dead on Netflix. I think we're going to be mentioning Wrath of Man, which is in theaters now, coming to VOD shortly.
Is that the Zack Snyder cut of Army of the Dead?
Army of the Dead, Wrath of Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know
it's the animated sequel. Which, no joking aside, there is a prequel animated thing coming to Netflix from anyway, we'll get into that in a moment. Yes. But I'm going to also, there's a couple other things that I saw. I want to mention, I saw A Woman in the Window. I saw Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is on HBO Max. Have you guys seen anything else that you think we might mention later on to kind of hook people into staying on the episode to listen to the end?
It seems like maybe next time we talk about this show would be the time to really take advantage of this. But I caught up on Mare of Easttown finally, so I can
great.
have a few thoughts about that.
Yeah, so we'll get to that too. What about you, Ronald? Anything that's super, super exciting that
Mare of Easttown is probably it.
Mythic Quest.
Mythic Quest. The Shy started back up.
Okay. Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff.
So yeah, stick around. We'll get into that a little more in a moment here. But just at the top of the episode, there have been some pretty interesting news bits that have come out. But I guess more so, I'm excited to talk to you guys about some of the trailers that we've been messaging back and forth about on our thread here over the past couple of weeks. But even just today, one of the more exciting ones that we've seen recently, a teaser came out for Edgar Wright's new film Last Night in Soho, which comes out in October, and this looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like another level for Edgar Wright. It's got like the flair, the visual look. It's got like a style to it, and I've been very excited to see what he does. I've pretty much really liked / loved, I think, every movie he's put out. Or been really involved with, including the what is it called, the Cornetto trilogy. Like I guess that's what it's officially called.
Yeah,
like Shaun of the Dead. What's it? Oh my God, Hot Fuzz, and
The World's End.
Correct. Baby Driver, I also really liked, but this is a whole different. Looks like an entirely different kind of movie for him.
Yeah.
Kind of like a horror thriller suspense. Two different time periods. It just really looks different and impressive, and the word on it is very positive. Some people that I've seen it or parts of it have been nothing but wild about it. So what did you guys think of the trailer for this?
It just looks visually dazzling, and seeing a guy like that take on more of a genre piece, and particularly a horror piece. Like, I've always loved, like, every one of my favorite directors, indie director, whatever kind of director, when they go into that horror realm, I always get a little excited, because I love the idea of someone bringing a style and an idea, and someone like Edgar Wright, who, I mean, I guess you could say he's kind of dipped his toe into horror for sure with like Shaun of the Dead. I mean, it played a lot of the zombie aspects of that story straight enough to say that it does have, some meat to it, but it ultimately has a satirical look at it. This looks a little different. This looks kind of dreamlike and lush, and just looks like it's almost like that kind of off-putting movie where you might be kind of unsettled, and then before the trailer's over, you get some imagery that is full on horror imagery, and it's, as you said, really inventive, both in terms of like visually, just the way they're pulling it off, whether it's an optical effect or it's something added digitally. It just looks like that creativity that we know this guy has in terms of putting together sequences. It looks like it's being put to the end of creating these horror moments. So I'm really intrigued by what that means, and the cast looks really, there's something really elegant and kind of old school looking about the filmmaking, in addition to the fact that it's sort of set in a different era. But no, I kind of can't wait. I mean, I'd heard of it and thought, oh, Edgar Wright doing a horror thriller thing, that sounds kind of neat. And then the trailer just made me go, oh wow, this looks, like you said, Steve, kind of a next level movie for him, maybe.
Yeah. What about you, Ronald?
I mean, this looks like one of those movies where story isn't sacrificed because of the visuals. A lot of the times I'm watching something that's supposed to be horror that doesn't feel quite like horror because it's emphasizing one or the other. And I love story. Like, at the heart of it, I don't care what genre we're watching. And I think that's kind of why I was so hesitant when we first started getting together to watch horror, because I was watching so many bad versions of that.
Sure.
And then you guys introduced me to good versions, like good stories ahead of everything, because that reels me in. Mm-hmm. This looks like a great story that doesn't compromise, and just so happens to have some beautiful visuals too. So I'm super excited. Yeah. It
looks like a I don't know what about it, but like it kind of feels like it has a bit of the style of like a De Palma movie. And even something in what the messaging is in it, and I'm guessing what it is going to be, but something about it even still kind of reminds me of like Jordan Peele's movies, like recently. Something about the way, I mean, beyond just having like a pop song in the trailer that's super spooky, like that's not what I'm referring to. I'm more so referring to just like how kind of creative some of the shots look, and just the idea that you are messing with time and space a little bit, and even just to see, like, that's how I found the trailer today. It was like Jordan Peele retweeted it, and I was like, and he was ecstatic about this trailer. I'm like, that's a good sign when like one of your favorite filmmakers is excited about a trailer from another filmmaker
Yeah.
who, you know, Edgar Wright is like a beloved guy, and everybody and their mother was tweeting that trailer out today. Like every filmmaker that I follow just seemed to be over the moon about it. But I don't know. Yeah, something about the style really does feel like a De Palma movie to me, which I am a big fan of. And I'd be interested to see if there is something there in some sort of like relation to some of those movies, which were always like really, really a tense experience to watch. So yeah, Last Night in Soho looks awesome, and I'm excited to see that in October. What other ones? Marvel dropped a teaser this week for like a proper teaser for the Eternals. Chloe Zhao's big Marvel movie coming out in November. Massive cast, massive scope, probably a huge story. Trailer looks great. I mean, it looks like a really different kind of Marvel movie. Maybe I don't want that to sound like a cliched response to like all these trailers now.
Yeah.
But like it's something about it does seem a little different or not even off, but like different. I don't know the right word. What do you guys think of the Eternals trailer?
I mean, this looks like a great movie that happens to be a Marvel movie. I don't know.
Sure, that's it. Yep.
I don't know what this is. Like, I think that's the best part about this is the phase that we were talking about where, you know, through fatigue or whatever, we're getting a set of characters that we just don't know about necessarily. Right. And I think whether you know the source material or not, this is going to be a telling through the eyes of the cinematic universe that we know. And they have some explaining to do. Why the fuck didn't they interfere with any of the events of Endgame? They kind of hinted at why in the trailer, but that's not good enough for me. And I need you guys to explain. And I think they're going to do it in a cool way. So yeah, I'm excited as hell about this trailer, man.
Well, it does feel like an expansion pack for the MCU, sort of. Like, you know, like it's like it's a delicate thing to say, like, can you introduce this concept that reaches beyond what we know in terms of going back in time and saying that the power of these beings seems like something closer to the sort of godlike characters that are maybe in Thor's milieu, but maybe even more powerful than that. Almost like a DC sort of superhero, like a Superman type figure, you know what I mean? Or even Captain Marvel. I mean, again, you could go on and on with these kind of overpowered, they can do anything type heroes, but this idea of it's like bringing in a semi-problematic idea, honestly, of like ancient aliens, and the idea that ancient cultures were influenced by aliens far in our past, and that certain techniques, and like, because there's been this whole argument about like the pyramids. People used to talk about maybe ancient aliens had helped, and it's because we can't imagine the techniques that they used to build these things, or certain structures even beyond that. Often it was just slave labor. It's like, oh, if you can allow 1,000 people to die in the building of your building, then you can do something amazing. You know, you can really make it happen. So there's some pretty different reasons, but there is a whole thing that people are saying now about ancient aliens being like this cult, like a Eurocentric idea that these ancient people couldn't possibly have accomplished something we can't accomplish nowadays without help from outside of humanity. And just the notion that ancient cultures may have had knowledge that we don't have and skills that we don't have. I think that, yes, I can see how that might be a Eurocentric idea. I think this movie looks like it's doing something that feels like they're going to sidestep that and almost treat these like they're angels, or like they've come down and they've taught us things and they've helped us out, but it's not like they're the reason why humankind is capable of amazing things, because even in the narration in the trailer, Angelina Jolie's character says, and we've seen they can do amazing things. So the idea of these aliens that have helped us in the past, thinking they need to come back and help us again. I mean, I'm like, okay, you've hooked me. Like my big sci-fi brain is hooked on that idea. It's actually similar to like the stuff that they tease at that Ridley Scott is on with Prometheus and all that shit, where it's like, okay, what made us the way we are? And if we could find the beings that made us the way we are, what do they think of us now? You know, that's intriguing. And then the cast just couldn't be more appealing to me. And the trailer has this excellent little piece in the middle of that seems like there's going to be a romance that spans eons or something.
Oh yeah,
because there's like that center frame shot of the two people together, and you see quickly that they're in all these different times, and whether they're always together or they always find each other. I'm getting a little fluttery just thinking about how, again, knowing what the MCU can do with emotion and knowing what Chloe Zhao can do with like rooting you in a moment. This may be whatever this, but it really seems like it has the potential to be, as you said, Ronald, like just a special movie that happens to be the next chapter in this soap opera that we like. So
Yeah.
It's exciting, man.
And of course, the other big thing that we can't stop talking about, we're so excited about, Timothée Chalamet. Finally, someone's going to bring to life the story of young Willy Wonka, and we're going to hear the origin of Willy Wonka.
Maybe. Do we need that?
I don't. I personally am pretty open to anything being good. If I see a trailer and it's good, whatever. But I mean, this is where I sort of feel like I'm one of those people who wants to shake their fist at prequels and reboots and all that stuff. It's like, that just sounds like such a bankrupt idea to me. That sounds like a joke idea from like 30 Rock, or that would be a project that was happening on Entourage or something like that. Would be Timothée Chalamet playing young Willy Wonka. That just... he's good. I don't doubt that they can do something interesting with it. But as I say that, there's a part of me that's like, what do you mean you don't doubt they could do something interesting with it? This movie doesn't need to be. This is like who cares? Does anyone on the street want more Willy Wonka right now? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a churl. Someone tell me I'm not being a churl.
You are not being one.
Yeah, you're not. I guess it's just like that kind of, it's just like they kind of mine anything and everything they own to, have this IP, this content that we always talk about. And, for better or worse, it's just, I think that it is a hugely profitable property for them. And it's just absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Just the IP itself, I think, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, the Johnny Depp one was like a huge box office hit. I mean, obviously Willy Wonka has its own place, but it's just like it's a property that if you kind of test it against a benchmark, it's like, okay, there's a generational awareness of Willy Wonka, there's generational awareness of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and okay, so a new awareness point would be, oh, well, what can we do different with it besides the sequel? And that idea is usually, they're like, well, let's do a prequel, because the people that have seen either of those movies, this is something they haven't seen, whether they want to see it or not. Like you're discussing, it's kind of like it's a property that is a profitable thing for them that really hasn't been exploited, I guess, to probably what they think it could be. But I mean, Warner Brothers is like, a multi-tiered company, and in light of what's happening with, them spinning out from AT&T and the whole Warner Media and Discovery thing that's about to happen, like Warner's is in the forefront of like, looking at their library and saying like, what can we put where? And it's like, this is something that, we could make some money off of, and also, Paul King is directing it. I don't know. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a musical. Like, it's just, there's a lot of couple. I mean, there's a couple.
Paul King is a huge plus column.
Right. And I'm saying you look at it and I mean, that's a win. So you have him on it.
Yeah.
You have a property that's profitable. You have Timothée Chalamet, who's arguably one of the biggest, or at least most interesting actors of his generation, and has been in and worked with and in around the most influential filmmakers, creators that are out there right now. And he's been in a lot of really great movies, and he's pretty great. I'm a fan.
Yeah, no. I mean, I was allowing for that. I'm just saying that on paper, hearing that is like, really, young Willy Wonka. That's where we're pretending. But you're right. If it's that profitable, then I guess I'm wrong. Maybe people are clamoring for like the story of Willy Wonka. I just never hear anybody ever talk about him. So to me, this sounded like a bad joke. But yeah, Paul King they could say he's directing anything. He's directing Donald Trump's biography, and I would be like, okay, maybe he's going to make something really charming out of that, so he's kind of earned my respect. And I don't doubt that Wonka, when you think about Paddington, you think about the tones of things, it's not like it's the craziest thing to think he could figure that out. So yeah, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's just I don't know, it's just like this merry-go-round of like, what do we have that we can just mine, versus what do we have to go out and find these original things that they're going to test this money against. It's like, well, they're going to probably test the money against the things that have made money before, like in Charlie, I think made like $500 million, which is a good return. It probably could have been higher or should have been higher, but I don't know, man. If you just look at the landscape, I mean, like, look, a company like Warner, they have theatrical, they have HBO Max, they have all these platforms they're trying to feed content to. It's like, I'm not surprised at all that, like, you're going to probably start seeing more of this kind of stuff where it's like, weird takes or weird splits in the road of like a story of existing property that they have, they can like go out and make it, for whatever budget. But I don't know.
Yeah.
This is something that's been long gestating. So I feel like, that the fact that it's coming together is not a complete surprise. And I mean, I'm interested in seeing it. Like you said, I love Paul King. And, I think people are really excited to see what he can do outside of the Paddington franchise. But what else? Is anything else? News? I mentioned briefly the whole Warnermedia Discovery AT&T stuff, which is pretty huge. It'll be years probably before that goes through, or at least a year if it goes through, and it probably will. But if you think about that library, that is going to be quite the competition for Netflix and like Disney Plus. Like that's a true juggernaut. I mean, it already is, but when you bring in Discovery to it, which has all the reality and sports and stuff like that, it's just like a real package to compete with. So I'd be curious to what that looks like when that goes through.
Yeah. I'm a Discovery Plus subscriber through Verizon.
Right.
They just gave me a year for free.
That's awesome.
And it's solid, man.
I've heard really positive things about their service. I don't personally have it, but I have a couple of friends at work that have it, and like really like the platform itself is like apparently really nice.
Yeah.
The other thing to mention is, and I guess we can get into the movies and shows we're going to talk about, that apparently it's almost a done deal that Amazon is going to buy MGM.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. $9 billion.
Oh my God.
This stuff just always sounds crazy to me. These numbers are crazy, and these deals get bigger and bigger, and it's just going to be like,
What?
Yeah. You didn't hear this, Ronald?
No, why? I must have. I'm heading out of town, so I've been like not
right
as close to. That is insanity to me. So
it's not official, but it's very close, it seems.
Do you think they're gonna have theatrical runs of movies, or you think they're just gonna?
I don't know. And it's really kind of like a weird thing that'll shake out. Like, it's kind of like a gray area, even what will be included, because I don't even know if like the Bond franchise will be included in it.
Because that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, it might be a part of their release strategy. Like they may have access to the distribution, but I saw some article that kind of was breaking down like the way that some of these deals are structured.
Yeah.
With MGM, like for something like Bond, who like what is it? The Broccoli's like have like a huge, like the people that kind of oversee that franchise have very intricate contracts like set up for that IP, which is kind of like why they're always kind of like going back and forth on what to do with that movie, because like they want a specific thing for it. Even when it's being made, it's a kind of like a reported thing that comes out all the time. So yeah, them and like like the Rocky franchise, like I mean the MGM library is legendary, so I mean it'd be huge for Amazon to have that. And I just the valuations seems to be higher than most people have said it, but Amazon's making $21 billion in profit this year. So I mean, what's $9 billion to acquire an entire an entire film studio history library, all the above.
And all that stuff's going to go to the idea that even a quarter of that goes to Amazon Prime makes it a contender. Like I think that one of the things that makes Amazon Prime kind of weird is that it feels like you're going to Hollywood Video, and it's like everything, every 70s movie, every 80s movie that you were like, that looks crazy.
Right.
And then to have that sort of looseness of and randomness of content, and then MGM stuff really feels like a cool move, man. Like I'm excited. It feels like it's going to benefit us. But at Amazon Prime, though, it's going to go up to like $120 for that shit. Watch. Whatever it is now, like what's it, like 99 a year or something?
Yeah.
Or?
I think it's like
over,
closer to 120 now.
Yeah, it's already at 100. I was gonna say.
It's going to be 100. It's going to be 150.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's going to go up a little bit.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, actually, this article I'm seeing now is saying it looks like Bond may be a part of it, but there may be some sort of special
treatment of it,
special relationship with
that
them.
makes sense.
Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, who kind of oversee the Bond
They're
franchise.
the ones who really control that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that it would be owned by them. And I mean, it's mentioning James Bond, Rocky, Pink Panther, RoboCop, like,
That's
Wait,
a lot of
Pink Panther RoboCop. I think you just came up with a
yes.
Yeah,
epic
hey,
crossover
yeah.
event.
Forget
the thing you mentioned about Amazon Prime, like the biggest faults of Amazon Prime, because they do have some like really great properties on there.
Mhm.
Their like interface, their
It's
app,
awful.
their UI is really the Achilles heel of that service.
It's
It's
awful.
horrible. It's horrible.
It's
It's
awful.
very confusing for people that don't like have a technical inclination, on their side. And it's just really, it feels like it's like years behind everything else.
It's
like
clunky.
it's really clunky. And it's
What's odd too is
Yeah.
like they're like one of the foremost like they have more 4K. So it's like Netflix and Amazon Prime have the most 4K content on the web for this like net price.
Yeah.
And the interface is trash. You would never know it. You have to dig and dig and dig and dig for the high quality stuff. It's a weird.
Yeah.
But
maybe that would force, I don't know, maybe they'd have to get something better. I mean, if they get that kind of acquisition, they can't bury that library in a interface that's like you can't navigate. So I don't know.
Awful.
Weird. But yeah, I don't know. That's another huge thing that kind of came up over the time we've been away. But did you have another thing you want to mention?
Peacock added profiles to their application, which is a pretty big deal. I don't know.
Cool.
So I won't be seeing murder docs on my Peacock anymore because Erin.
You mean Erin's library?
some murder docs. Can I get a story with 10 people murdered, please? At least 10. She loves it. And also American Crime Story or American something. It's like one of those
American Crime.
Yeah, I think that might be the name of it. American Crime.
There's American Crime Story, which is the Ryan Murphy.
No. I think it's American Crime or American.
There's a series called American. That's the one that was it Felicity Huffman was in, and I think Regina King was in. She won an Emmy for.
Yeah.
What is it called? It's called American something. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have profiles, which is nice. I mean, that's a big update.
Cool.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I haven't really used Peacock that much. I mean, I have.
You are silly. You're a silly.
I have the free tier or whatever. Did you just punch something or
no?
Was that you pretending to slap me for not using?
He just Gordon Ramsay the table.
Yeah.
It's like this,
how dare you not use Peacock?
This scallop is overcooked. That's what we call that.
I love Gordon. Gordon Ramsay looks everyone in the face, whether they're 6'5" or 5'2", and talks to them the exact same way. Like stank as shit. It's like it talks to everybody crazy. I love when people try to get in his face and he's like, it's not gonna work on me. It's amazing, man. Sorry.
I like it when occasionally his voice cracks. Like he's like Mr. Authoritative, but every now and then he'll be like, how dare you? And he'll kind of shriek and it'll get a little bit more like you can. And I feel like maybe as it goes on, he does that less, like he controls it more. He's more polished. He's like he's the strong man more,
Yeah.
But what I was noticing was like back before we watched Gordon Ramsay, we watched the Great British Baking Show or whatever that is called. And we used to, on that show, Paul Holliday is kind of the Simon Cowell, and he's like the asshole of that show. But I was like, it's funny that now it's like, wait a minute, my receptors are so totally blown out by Gordon Ramsay. It's impossible to think of Paul Hollywood now as like an asshole when I've seen like Gordon Ramsay like punch the table and shout at someone and tell them to fuck off and that they're fucking stupid. It's like Paul Holliday, the worst he's ever said is like, the sponge is rubbish. Like that's really not that bad.
Yeah. God, man.
You don't want your sponge to be rubbish.
He complains about everything's dry. Like when something's dry, he hates it.
That's rubbish. But if it's lovely, if it's a lovely sponge, then that means you've done it right. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Good shows, man.
Yes, addictive at least.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some movies.
Yes.
That's how I say it now. Is that a movie? It's been a while since I've been.
They've actually changed it to that. Like okay. you're up to speed.
No, actually, I'm basing that in my mind. I realized that's a friend of mine from high school. We were at her house, and I was kind of like setting her up with my cousin on a date, and we were all leaving, like my girlfriend and my cousin and myself and this friend of mine. And as we were leaving, her dad said, "So you guys gonna go see some movie? You guys gonna go to a movie?" He said it in this weird lilting way that like I just never forgot. And I feel like I said that to my friend, you know, like, you know, that was one of those things that you pick up in high school that you never let go.
Right.
Movie. You guys going to the movies? It was just an interesting musical way to say the word.
Yeah.
Now I've shared that. Do you guys have anything from high school you want to talk about before we move on?
Not particularly,
All right.
I'm good.
All right, let's talk about a movie. Which
Where
one?
to start? Where to start?
Army
Wrath
of the
Man?
Dead.
Oh,
Wrath
I
of
said
Army.
my answer to that is yes.
yes.
Yes, to
Let's
everything.
We should
talk about them
do
both at the same
two
time.
conversations. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
each talk about one movie, and I'm gonna just try to interact
Just
with
on
both
top
of you.
each other.
You just
And
harmonized with one
It's
of
gonna
us.
go.
or
I'm
the
gonna
other.
go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go thirds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Let's. You already mentioned Netflix, so let's do that. Let's go with the
Okay.
Netflix movie, Army of the Dead. The Zack Snyder cut of Army of the Dead. Now this is like an actual new Zack Snyder movie that is on Netflix, and you know, feels like a big budget epic, and it is
Yeah.
kind of an epic for a zombie movie. If we put our cold open on this episode, we may have heard some of our opinions already, but let's talk a little bit about just what it means to have a new Zack Snyder movie that isn't a DC movie, and also. What did you think of this specifically, especially in relation to Dawn of the Dead, his first directorial effort, which I think by many people is seen as his best movie?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Well, I can't help but wonder if the controversy with Chris D'Elia really did affect the way that things happened with the edit of this film and how much like couldn't be recovered. So for anybody that doesn't know, Chris D'Elia got into a situation with underage women and underage girls.
I mean, it seemed to be
I mean,
grooming and propositioning.
grooming, like
underage girls,
there's
right?
Yeah, so the grooming is a very complicated, gross thing, to be completely honest.
Yes.
And because of that, he was kind of banished from all things that he was doing at the time, and one of them was Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. And instead of just scrapping the entire movie, he was replaced with Tig Notaro, and with these weird edits that obviously looked like she had been kind of put in at post.
Yeah.
She was very flat in certain scenes, and just kind of zoomed in, and it's very obvious that they tried to salvage something from this film. For anybody that's wondering, because it wasn't very public that he had gotten replaced. So you may be coming into this film like, man, this is the most ridiculous editing. And sure, it is Zack Snyder-esque editing, but on top of that, having to deal with the idea of re-editing the movie, reshooting things without a whole person being in it that was supposed to be in it. So
Tig Notaro, the comedian who replaced Chris D'Elia, didn't interact with the other cast really at all. She was brought in and filmed mostly against a green screen. And I saw somewhere where Dave Bautista said, who is the star of the film, said that he would love to one day meet Tig Notaro, but I also think that it's a disservice to her, and a weird way a disservice to the movie, the way that worked out. I don't know if you guys saw the For All the Money in the World, if that was what the name of that was, or if it was just All the Money in the World, the Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah.
They replaced Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer. I mean, you're so happy to see Christopher Plummer in this role, but you're also noticing the ways in which the movie was stitched together. And there were some scenes where it was incredibly awkward. And then there were other scenes that were basically just, you shot an actor on a set and you edited it in. It works reasonably well. I felt like going into this, I knew about that. I knew that Tig Notaro was inserted after the fact.
right.
I thought it was worse than I expect. Like that part of it was worse than I expected. I was like, I thought they were going to pull off more magic with how they integrated things. But whenever she was interacting with people, it was rare that she really looked like she was part of the scene. So much so that I really noticed it in a couple of shots. I was like, oh, wow, they did a good job. And there was one scene that was like in the shadows where they did a pretty good job of compositing her in, but most of that didn't work. And then the other scenes were so clearly shot with a cutaway to her at an important moment. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where once you notice it, it really stood out. But it just made me think about that, which I think is an odd thing to be thinking about when you're watching the movie, like thinking about Crystalia and what he did. It's just an odd note. So it's one of those weird, unfortunate things that happens to a movie where it's like there's not really a good solution to that problem. I think they probably did about as good of a job as could be expected, and maybe I don't know, like maybe to someone who doesn't know this background, that the bad effect shots won't stand out so much, because I think there's a certain amount of digital compositing excuse me, even beyond that I also think there were some moments where characters look like they were cut out and stuck in front of a background.
Yeah.
So it's an ambitious movie visually with what it's trying to show you. I don't know how much it cost. There were times where it felt like, huge budget, huge scope filmmaking. And then there were other times where it felt like, as often Zack Snyder's movies have these moments where it's like, this is an ambitious shot that looks unfinished.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, do you you kind of just alluded to this, but like, do you think if we didn't know about it, you would notice it?
Yes.
I think I would have noticed something was weird. I would have been like, that looks weird.
Really?
I would have been like, there's this scene. So I didn't, it was one of those things that I remember when Crystalia, they were kind of going down the list of things that he got taken out of. I remember that.
Yeah.
I did not remember Army of the Dead. So like I was watching, I was like, okay, I remember Tig Notaro said she was going to be in it and didn't really explain why on certain outlets. And then I'm seeing her in a scene with a gun and she looks flat, like a piece of paper. Like, and I was like, this is weird. And then the shots that they kept showing where it was just, her isolated, like John was saying, and it just felt like they were zooming in on just her body and the background is completely blurry. And that kept happening. It's kind of like,
I think that is that's in the movie in general.
Yeah,
though. Like
yeah.
these soft blur, like rack focuses, like that's all over the movie. I only asked that because I was pretty aware of it. I felt like they actually promoted it. I feel like it was out there a lot personally, that like she was replacing him and the way in which they were doing it. So like, I don't know. I didn't really feel like it bothered me that much. Like the people that I watched it with had no idea. Like, and
see, that's what I would wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's I'm curious, like asking, cause like, they had no clue. And I kind of told them after the fact, like, hey, check this out. This is kind of wild. But, it is interesting, like, thinking about how they pull this off. And I think like, I think all things considered, I don't know. It's hard to imagine like a better solution, like I think no matter what you do, when you commit to this kind of thing, it's like, there's going to be seams and there's going to be some awareness or some really kind of very visible tells of things like you're mentioning, like a lot of like, she's in a lot of shots only with her, very few shots with the group. And if it's with the group, it's with a couple people, not the whole group. She's in like very few of the wide shots. And it's just like, there's logic behind why. But I still think like the way they accomplish that kind of stuff is just mind blowing to me, or at least try to accomplish it is like, it is kind of like magic, like the way that they kind of rotoscope around people in the foreground and things like that. I was watching like a video about it on YouTube, and it was like not specifically about Army of the Dead, but about this idea. It was mentioning For All the Money in the World. It's just like wild to think about the need for that in this day and age, and to be able to not only need to do it, but to be able to pull it off to some degree of success. And I think most people that probably don't know about this would never realize it. I mean, not in my opinion, because I think they kind of approached it from a way that kind of hides it in a lot of ways. But in the movie in general, like I kind of feel like depending if you use that cold open, it's been a point of conversation in my household. Because in general, like, is this a good movie? No, it's not a good movie, but I did find it to be pretty entertaining and to be pretty watchable, actually. It's way too long, as are most of his movies. It is bloated. There's a lot of stuff going on. There are scenes that play out way too long. There are character beats, emotional beats that are not necessarily bad scenes.
They're just in a weird place.
They're just in a weird place. And do they need to even be there? It's like some of that stuff is just kind of where you
are
really
we
start
all
to
thinking
feel...
about the same moment? There's an emotional moment late in the movie that feels unearned. It follows another very similar emotional moment, and it's right before a character gets killed. And so it's like they wanted to get in one more emotional moment with this character before killing off this character. And
Right.
I was thinking like this would have worked so much better had they just barreled through that, because there's a moment of like they're trying to escape and then his character stops to have a conversation that
Yes.
feels like, why are we talking about this now? You know, and
Right.
and there's been no setup for that. Like literally a minute ago, this character was joking around and being like, it just didn't make sense. And I was like,
Yeah.
what a again, like I said about the Tig Notaro thing, it was a disservice to the character and to the movie. It's like the rhythm of it, it would have felt better. The death even would have had more impact, I think, if it had not followed this emotional scene. So I think you guys know the moment I'm talking about. But anyway, you know, I think you nailed it. It's not even that the scenes are like poorly put together. I think Dave Bautista in particular is like, he's like an understated actor trying to do something kind of soulful, whether it's the smartest way to approach a movie like this or not. I like his quiet, and I like that he brings that to a role. And I even heard somewhere where he said that after his scene in Blade Runner and seeing how people responded to that, it really opened his eyes to like taking himself a little more seriously, pushing himself to more sincere emotional places as an actor. And you feel that in this. And I think that he does what he can to redeem. And yes, somehow the 100-minute version of this movie seems like it would have been a hell of a lot more fun.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I don't know that we need 40 minutes to get the team together for a heist in a heist movie where we know they're going to go on the I don't know. There's just lots of little elements, but I think we always have that when a movie's 2 hours and a half long. There's almost always that sense that like, unless it's just a movie with this packed with plot and incident where you just have to have that time, it almost always feels like, and I'm not Mr. Short Attention Span, but it almost always feels like it's a little bloated to be at that length, especially for this kind of genre movie.
Sometimes wonder like if he's given a little too much rope, a little too much rope to do this kind of stuff. Like, so, you know, we've kind of seen in the last couple releases of like Tarantino movies, things that are hitting that 2.5 hour, 3 hour mark, that to me, even with the sort of attention to detail that Tarantino has, sometimes feels like too much.
Yeah.
This is overkill for a person who does not have a grasp of threading things together the way that Tarantino can thread things together. So if he struggles with a 3 hour movie or a 2.5 hour movie, who are you, Zack Snyder, to do this? That's all I'm saying. Oh,
yeah.
But then there's also this argument. I've heard this joke that somebody said that if you showed Orson Welles like Army of the Dead, he'd be like, this is a fucking amazing movie. Because you have to think like we're spoiled on some level of the level of like intricacy in stories and special effects and stuff like that, that sometimes when something's a little like wild and wacky like this movie is, that we get a little like, oh, but we put our nose up to it. But this is a fucking, it's the first 40 minutes are hard to watch, man. That's what I'll say. Like, I want to watch trash that I could think is a good movie. Like, I don't like I don't mind a trashy movie that gets a little gross and weird. And I don't think he likes women. I don't know why women have no place in this movie. They're kind of thrown to the side and treated like accessories to the story. Like,
I mean, I think there's a couple of characters that would push against that, but ultimately, I think that yes.
You mean the lady that was stabbing people a little bit?
I'm talking about the daughter, I guess, would be the only character that really. But like, I'm not arguing for her as a great character. I'm just saying she's a character who doesn't fit that mold. But also, like, I actually want to just add that I do think like the first, like the opening and through the credits of this movie are super fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's after that it gets to the bloated, like instantly the tone switches to this more melodramatic tone where it's like the music is playing it for serious. I don't know. There's some, you know, when you got Dave Bautista with like the little horn rim glasses, like working as a fry cook, I feel like that should have felt more fun and campy. And instead it felt like it was being played 100% straight. And I just don't, I think there were some difficult moments where actors had to figure out a difficult tone in this thing. Like some of the exposition, some of those opening scenes feel kind of flat. I think once you get into the action, the way that people interact is much more interesting and much more in that kind of, you know, like Aliens or something like that, where it's just a bunch of people going in and getting picked off. You even have a kind of Paul Reiser character who's like there to screw everybody over with the secret mission. So I don't know. I think that all of that would have felt so much more fun if we had gotten there quicker, I think. So it is weird to imagine like, oh, if this movie was 30 minutes shorter, would 25 of that not come from the beginning? Do you know what I mean? Like so much of it would come from the beginning. Go ahead.
I sympathize more with the zombies than I did the people.
I was just about to say, I like that the zombies actually had some kind of culture and seemed like they were doing something. That actually felt like a wrinkle in this movie. So yes, you end up going like, they're just trying to get through their day. These zombies, you know, that these greedy people came in. But no, I do like that element. I think that Zack Snyder, clearly that's one of the things that he's kind of imagined about this world, is like a take on zombies that's a little different. And I've heard, of course, they want to make a franchise out of it or whatever. So we'll see what happens with his intentions. But that was an element that to me felt like the thing that to me is missing from Walking Dead, which is that like the zombies are just kind of anonymous, you know, that you have to have human villains to be interesting. But these were like zombie villains that were, you know, almost like something from an Evil Dead movie or something. They had like character to the zombies, or a couple of them anyway.
Steve, you're so quiet.
No. I kind of was saying what I had to say already. I mean, I just feel like I do feel like it's not a great movie, but I did personally find it pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, even though it is overlong and it's bloated, it just feels like there's so many story points that just seem not necessary for what makes the movie interesting, which is this trifecta of a zombie movie, a heist movie, and a ticking clock. Like that. That's it. Like, I don't need to see these people, you know, I don't need to see Batista like in a personally, like, you know, the whole, you know, him being approached by the guy and putting the team back together. You know, like, I don't need to see the team back together. I just saw this awesome opening of them getting out once. So I can assume they could probably get in and out again, you know, but against the backdrop of a clock, of a nuke coming down, and like maybe they find out about this safe a different way and go after it themselves for their personal reasons. Like, it just seemed like there was a whole area of the story that was just so unnecessary. Like, just the idea of really having someone like that, the Tanaka character, and like, you know, what their motivation was for the heist. And like, every time you see him, once they're in there, it's like a quick cut of him being like, oh, like, you know, like there's no character there. There's no reason for that character at all, really. And, you know, there's no character, you know, there's no reason for the character that he has in with the group, like the Paul Reiser stand-in, except for the way that he is pretty awesomely disposed of. Yeah. But I mean, it's just like when you really sit back and kind of dissect it, which, like I said, we've been talking about this movie a little bit in this house. What bothers me most is that I do think literally if you cut 30 to 40 minutes of this movie and really just get to those three things and let these characters operate in that, I think it's a way better movie. Yeah. And I mean, and that's even saying I still found it entertaining. I still probably find myself watching this movie again in the future, just randomly throwing it on and checking it out, because there's stuff about it that I did like, you know.
Steve, you're crazy. You are. No, I've never just called you crazy. You are crazy.
You called me crazy about Peacock a little bit ago. So I'm just kind of staying in character. I don't know. I mean, honestly, like, it's a zombie movie about a heist. Yeah. You know, where they're nuking, you know, I guess it gets
with a zombie tiger and a zombie horse in it.
Right. It's just perspective, you know, and a zombie baby, you know, like it's just perspective to me.
It's called a zombie baby.
I don't know like what I'm looking for in this movie. I know that I want to be entertained, which I was, even though it again was way too long. Yeah. That's my biggest criticism probably, is that it just suffers from this thing that I feel like there's so much I like about Zack Snyder, because I like a decent amount of his movies.
Me too.
And I think he does have like a visual skill, and, you know, the way he shoots and composes some shots, and, you know, I do like a lot of it, but it's just like, he just can't get out of his way, you know, in terms of like bloating the hell out of these movies. And they're all too long. You know, and it's like the most consistent criticism that I'd probably wage against him. You know, Dawn of the Dead, it's probably my favorite movie that he has, that or Watchmen, you know, but I just
didn't James Gunn write that?
Yeah. James Gunn wrote Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. And that's probably why it's so great, because it's like get to the point, and he's like one of the best at it. And he has a firm grasp on the genre and knows how to make it interesting and different.
And he knows how to create characters kind of on the fly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I don't know. And like, you just spend too much time. Like when you have a cast of like, a crew of 6 or 7 or 8 people, I don't know that you need a whole lot of additional people, and it's just, and there's all these
Yeah.
like tertiary characters that keep popping up, like the quarantine zone and the security
Oh,
guard at the
did you guys
quarantine
catch
zone.
some weird
and like,
political shit with the
Yeah,
quarantine zone with like
yeah.
the government can claim that you have a fever or whatever,
Right.
and your
Yeah.
your temperature's dropping, I think, because the
Just
disease
weird
is
stuff
the zombie
like that.
disease. And he claims his movies don't have a right-wing bent to them, and maybe they don't. But that felt like that was just a weird note to inject into it. It was like that felt weird.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. All that stuff, and again, that stuff could be gotten to so much quicker. I think the movie acts like we need all this setup and all this. Like Dieter is a good example of a character who, like, Dieter is fun when he shows up. He's kind of the untrained, the least schooled fighter of the bunch. You get him in immediately. We don't really need the scene of seeing him look at the blueprints and decide to take the job. You could just have him showing up. And I think the movie makes the mistake of thinking that like we'll wonder, or it's him milking what he wants to do, like a getting the team together montage. That sounds like a fun montage, but somehow it just felt like the fun was missing from it, and it felt like it was padding out that runtime. Maybe it was knowing this movie was 2.5 hours long from the get-go that I was like noticing those moments that felt stretched out. But even like Dave Bautista waking up from a nightmare, and I don't know, I was not buying into the like the drama of that as much as I think the movie needed me to.
Is that guy getting a spinoff show? Army of Thieves. That's the.
I think is that the prequel? Is that the?
He's getting his own. No, he's getting his own show.
A show, okay.
He's getting his own show called
Like
Army of Thieves.
Scott Ward is.
Yeah.
Scott Ward.
The Dieter.
Oh, Dieter. Okay.
Dieter's he's getting a spin-off show called Army of Thieves.
I mean, okay.
It's a spin-off of. They had like a promo. They had like a promo poster and everything for it already. I'm like, how the hell?
But it's a prequel though.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yeah.
I guess because of
yeah.
But then there's a prequel cartoon.
Yeah, that's.
I thought you were talking
Las
about the
Vegas.
cartoon. Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I meant just a prequel movie.
So there are a lot of spin-offs happening with this thing.
I mean, more power to them. I don't doubt that they could make something fun out of this. I am a little bit curious about the cyborgs and the alien connections and all that stuff. So we'll see what comes of all that. But shall we move on to the Wrath of Man, or just Wrath of Man, not the Wrath of Man. The new Guy Ritchie joint, which is and it is fully, it's 100% a Guy Ritchie thing. Although this feels like they were trying to go for something a little more like mature or something. This movie felt a little bit like, I mean, it felt like an attempt at that. I don't know that it quite succeeded. I felt like there was some kind of, there was some really cool technical aspects to this movie. I think it kind of, I don't know how I felt about, though. This was another one that felt a little bit drawn out by the time it got to the end for me. But I do think that just the filmmaking, there were some really cool sequences and shots and enough to keep me interested visually. What did you guys think of Wrath of Man?
I liked it. I didn't think it was perfect. This felt like his trying to do what Spike Lee did with
Inside Man.
Okay.
Where like, tonally very different from the catalog that the director had, trying to go for something a little more broad. It felt a little more broad than any of his other ones. But
you mean more broad than Aladdin?
Yeah, a little more.
Or King Arthur?
Okay.
It felt less broad to me. It felt like it was more tamped down. I feel like his movies are usually more funny and full of these colorful characters, whereas this one felt like it was an attempt to be serious and do something stripped down.
I don't think, well, by that I mean, like, I couldn't give any of my friends his films necessarily and have them fall for it the way that they would for something a little more like just a regular heist. Some of his films feel so specific, so like very like, this is this neighborhood in this area with this one guy with this weird accent that's trying to be a drug dealer in this neighborhood. I mean, and sure, that stuff for me is his bread and butter, is like the dirty white gangster movies is what I like to call them. I love the sort of slice of life thing that he does with his films that this seems to avoid wholeheartedly. It just kind of dodges it like a bullet, where I'm not invested in the characters quite as much because I'm not taken into the little intricacies of what makes people work. And I'm kind of dealing with this man that's trying to figure out who killed his son, which works on some level, but the story, putting it all together, felt muddy. Like I was like, what is happening with this person?
I thought this movie did too much of that 3 months later, 5 weeks before,
5 weeks later,
5 months.
weeks.
It did too much. Like I didn't find that the way that it told us the same event from 3 different perspectives. I didn't find that narratively, that by the time we got around to like the third time through seeing this story unfold, it felt like, boy, this is just dragging me through this event again. And I've kind of already figured it out. I already sort of know where we're going with it. And I mean, you know, whatever the opposite of chewing scenery is what Scott Eastwood does. Like somehow that guy is just bland. And I just thought that having him at the center of this movie in a way felt like a mistake. And Jason Statham is so great when he's got little flashes of humor, and this movie didn't really give him much of a chance to do that. So I don't know. Yeah. I just felt like this movie was what you're calling broad. I guess to me, I'm calling bland, but we both seem to be saying the same thing, which is that it's missing that character quirk that usually makes Guy Ritchie's movies so fun to see, especially with the casts that he gets, Yeah. And I do think, I will stress again, I do think there's some precision filmmaking with the way some of this stuff is choreographed, and some of these scenes are fun to watch unfold. There's a moment where some guys in an armory in a warehouse, you just decide to fight back. That just the shit gets crazy from that moment. And I was like,
yes,
it reminds me of that moment in Nobody where Bob Odenkirk is just like picking off bad guys, in a warehouse in that too. But that was fun and felt like it knew that it was a little silly. And this feels like it just, it's something about this movie was almost like ultra violent in an ugly way to me too. There were a couple of moments that I found like unpleasant in a way that the movie didn't have the substance to counterbalance. And did you guys have a hard time believing this was LA, right? It was like in LA where
I don't know where the fuck that
LA,
was. It was supposed to be LA.
Where everybody is someone with a different accent trying to do an American accent. It was like, It takes place in weird accent land. It's full of funny talking people. That there's no explanation for any of that, but I think it was supposed to be LA. Did you guys get that?
Yeah, it was LA. Yeah. They picked a bunch of British people to be like, you want a job. It's like, if you try to beat, the problem is if you're trying to do an American accent, sometimes you wind up sounding like a robot, kind of in try to do like a Southern or colloquial accent. Trying to be British, if you're British and trying to do an American colloquial accent,
or you sound like the Joker or Bill the Butcher or something, where you're doing this, this kind of thing. No, it's and the nonstop locker room talk for like the first chunk of the movie too was so corny, and like everybody's just is like gay panic. The movie, it's like 97 lines in a row with guys like busting each other's balls in this way that felt really just did not feel real to me at all. Even Hoyt McCallany, what's his name? How do you say his name? McCallany, McCallany. I think it's McCallany. Is that his name?
Hoyt McCallany.
Hoyt McCallany. McCallany, however you're supposed to say it.
McCallany.
Even he felt like wooden and kind of out of place, whereas normally he's like this pinch hitter of awesomeness for me. So it's like, I think that there's fun to be had, and there's kind of that muscular action that you expect from one of these movies. But you're talking about Zack Snyder hating women. This was the movie where I felt like this movie it's just like shamelessly testosterone fueled, and it didn't feel like it was, I don't know. Like I was fully engaged throughout, but when it was over, I felt kind of bludgeoned by it, and I sort of felt like it. Yeah, it too felt like it should have had more fun or something. I don't know. What did you think, Steve? You've been awful quiet about Wrath of Man.
I kind of liked it, man. I gotta agree with Ronald.
I did too.
I gotta agree.
I liked it too.
I'll go as far to say that I probably more than liked it. I was super into this movie. I do agree with most of what you said, John. Like, some of the stuff with Holt, who I generally love, and
well, it's Holt. I was saying Hoyt. So that might be.
Holt. It's Holt.
Yeah, it's Holt.
And like the locker room stuff, like some of that early stuff is weird. Like the nicknames they have, it makes no sense. Like there's a lot of there's stupidity here for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, like I kind of love like when Guy Ritchie gets back to these like crime crime action thrillers, whatever. And honestly, like I like the time jumps. I like moving around. I like the idea of kind of once we kind of get caught up with the crew that actually did what happens in the beginning of the movie, like you're then with them for like a good part of the movie until until their paths cross again. So I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised by it because I kind of had heard mixed positive on this movie. I do agree about Scott Eastwood. Like, stop trying to make him happen. I don't get it. Like,
aren't you glad they didn't cast him as young Han Solo? No,
oh my God, get out of here. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of do love Josh Hartnett though. I kind of wish maybe he was in that role.
God.
He was really,
he's so good.
I
Yeah,
loved him.
I kind of was hoping, well, whatever. I'm not going to try to spoil, but I was, like there's certain characters. Obviously, it's going to be surprising when certain people go and how they go in a movie like this. But I thought he was more I like when an actor plays fear and like incompetence, but without playing it as like a total bumbling fool. And I thought he did a good job of being almost like a regular guy in this.
Yeah. It was so heightened and he was so regular that I loved it. I liked when everything heightened. He was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not built for this. This is a part of my life. And Jason Statham, I loved seeing them in scenes together because I thought that the difference in it almost made me feel like he may have been a part of the twist that I thought.
Right. Yes.
And I think you're meant to think that.
Right. There's a few characters that you're unsure of as the movie progresses, and he's one of those characters that fits in that box of like, okay, he could be the inside man, so to speak, for this crime ring.
My beef is that this felt like an old script that got made now.
It's a remake of a movie from like
a French movie called
2004. Cash Truck.
See? It felt like
you know what I thought, Ronald? You know what I thought when I was watching it? I was like, this feels like it's based on a graphic novel. That's what I was thinking. Like with the way even the shots were positioned, but just the way the story unfolded, I was like, this feels like it's playing with like, it was kind of like you were just talking about Tarantino. It was kind of structured like a Tarantino film in the way that, and as much as I did not particularly care for the feeling I had when I realized the movie was stretching itself out by doing the same event as many times as it did, Steve, I liked the one thing you mentioned, which was following one group and seeing how they fit into that story and then following another group. And that feels kind of Tarantino-ish in a way, to be like, you thought these characters were sort of the bad guys or the faceless characters in this other scene, and then you see a little more character from them. And there's essentially like 3 crews that we learn about in this. Right. And it does take a little puzzling over almost as the movie progresses to get a sense of like, wait, when did that scene happen and how did it happen in relation to the other thing? And I found a little bit of that confusing. If you enjoyed that, maybe you weren't confused as it was rolling along, but I found there were moments where I was thinking like, I'm stopping to put this together. And I just personally think if you do too much 2 weeks later, 3 hours before, like if you're doing, I feel like that's a sign of a script that could be straightened out a little bit, but not so much that the problem is that they showed the same event 3 different ways. Just that I thought that by the time they got to the 3rd time through, it felt like, oh, now I see how this movie is 2 hours long or however long it is. But, but I think there's some neat character turns in this. And I do think there's a couple of moments just where in the midst of, the action and the violence, characters sort of show what they're made of. And I think Guy Ritchie is good at shooting that kind of stuff with style. As I've said already a couple of times, there's a few shots that are really bold and interesting, the way that they take in a scene. And he does frame things like almost that opening scene. The first time we see that the event happen, it's framed in the most oblique
static
way.
Camera.
And then as we go through it, we do learn more and more about it. So as I'm talking about it, I am realizing that part of it is something that from the filmmaking standpoint, I do think that it unfolds and it's clearly very,
that's
very
what I liked about it.
Yeah.
Guy Ritchie is a person that got into a fist fight before because there's something about
multiple times.
There's something about the dynamic between men that he knows about. It has nothing to do with big people and small people. It has to do with like, if I confront you, Steve, what are you going to do? It doesn't matter how big you are. If I corner you with no guns, and I'm like, I'm going to beat your ass. What are you going to do as a person? It doesn't mean you're going to fight me necessarily. It's about what you do when you're faced with confrontation. And it's sometimes it's like a verbal exchange that maybe a lot's going on. Sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it's gunfights.
Yeah.
I do love that, man. Like he captures that sort of like hyper masculine sort of thing, or perceived hyper masculinity.
or a cartoonish version of it almost,
Yeah. And sometimes I think he's kind of saying in these situations, you kind of have to be a cartoon version of yourself if you're going to survive in these situations. You have to become bigger than life to get out of it, or you get kind of eaten alive, which he
by
loves.
a zombie tiger. Or am I confusing these?
He loves it. That's some crossover there.
We do have a character in both of these movies.
And
Yes.
Was it Raul
Yes.
Castilla?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I noticed that. And he got his ass handed to him in both of these things.
I won't say which movie, though. I will say he lasted longer in one of those movies. I picked him as the guy to go first in one of those films, and I was shocked when we were in the final moments, and it was like, oh wait, he lingered. So make of that what you will.
There was one character that was so eager to get involved in the situation. I'm like, you're dead. He's like, I love a mission. You're dead. If you love a mission, you're dead. So anyway, I thought it was okay, man. I'm probably gonna watch this movie again. I love a Guy Ritchie heist.
I could see watching this one again for it's got the shark-like efficiency of the lead character, the kind of, again, the precision of the filmmaking. I could almost put it on without the volume and just look at a couple sequences and pay attention to a couple moments and just to appreciate that part of it. But because I do find that, I don't know, there's just an energy sometimes. Some directors are good at kind of keeping a movie going. And I think that Guy Ritchie, he puts together sequences that are at least worth a second look, if not many more than that. But
I think this is good.
No, I was just going to say, I think his movies I need to fill in some gaps in his movies. There's some of his that I haven't seen. I realize some of the more recent ones, like The Gentleman, I never saw. And I know that some people enjoyed that one. So yeah, check it out.
You need to check out The Gentleman.
Like that one looks like it had a little bit more of the kind of character comedy, so to speak, that I'm talking about. Just the cast.
This is the different. This does feel a little different for his like signature kind of like crime movies that
it's like
he
more
does.
tamped down. But and the chapter titles actually in this worked for me in a sense of being kind of ominous and like.
I kind of like. I feel like this is one of my better movies I've seen this year, in my opinion. Honestly, like it's up there for me.
I'll have to give it another look.
Yeah.
I liked it, man. Like there were a lot of things I did not like about it, but for some reason I came out in the end. Like I knew what was going to happen. I know who's starring in it. I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But for some reason I was like, I'm in for the ride. And you're right. The Gentleman is a softer, more accessible version of Guy Ritchie. If I'm like, if somebody's like, give me something old and give me something new of Guy Ritchie's, I'd give them The Gentleman, and I'd probably give them something like Rock and Roller, which is one of my favorites. Like I love Rock and Roller. It's like so stylized in a way that, and there's like Idris Elba comedy. It's like it's a little bit of everything. So
yeah, well, I need to, I'll dig into some.
Yeah.
So, anything else we've watched? I know we said Mare of Easttown was something we've all seen.
Yeah, I feel like we should kind of like go through some of these quickly, like just kind of rattle off a couple things that we want to throw out there. I mean, Mare of Easttown, I've been banging that drum. I know, I'm glad you guys have caught up to it.
4 episodes in.
Okay, well, the finale is this coming weekend.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully maybe we can all kind of, maybe once the show's over, like John said, we can talk a little bit more about it maybe next week.
Do a longer segment.
But in general, like it's personally, it's like one of the best things on TV for me. I mean, on TV, for me. I just think, Kate Winslet is like one of my favorite actresses. So to see her in a role like this in a series on HBO Max or HBO is a treat, I think, like to be able to see her do what she does on a weekly basis for 7 weeks. Evan Peters is probably the MVP of the show.
So good in this.
So good.
Like watching him play a guy who's more straight-laced, it's like it makes his kind of tics that still kind of emerge.
Yeah.
It just creates this genuine sense of like a very good-natured but slightly socially awkward person. And it's just, you instantly love this guy. He's just, I don't know, it's so interesting. And it's a nice contrast to Kate Winslet, who's not doing like a caricature of like a hardened person, but a person who's really been through some trauma and has her walls up. And it's like, she's a great actress. So
Right.
watching those two personalities bounce off of each other, even Guy Pearce is has been a good scene partner for her. And he can sometimes be kind of bland to me, but I feel like he's been pretty strong in this. And Gene Smart and Juliet Nicholson, man, it's that HBO, it's everything that we know about the HBO brand of quality. It's that kind of storytelling. Once it's over, I have a few thoughts brewing about the structure of these mysteries and how they actually play out over the course of like 7 or 8 hours, and whether that's the best way to tell these stories. But I'll have to see how this one wraps up before I throw it in the pile with like The Outsider and whatever the Nicole Kidman thing was, where I'm kind of thinking about these murder mysteries that get you going early on and then have to maintain that tension over so many hours, how they do it and how they stack up. But I just like the backdrop of this show. I just think that like they've taken care with the characters to develop people that feel real throughout. And it does make you think about the tapestry of humanity that's affected by this kind of story. Even if it's like a heightened reality, it does feel grounded in a way that, just feels well observed, and it makes that acting that we're talking about really shine.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah, small town. It emphasizes relationships in a way that I just, I'm honestly emotionally exhausted from like kid killing shows.
That part of it's really rough.
Yeah, but the heart of this movie, this feels like a movie. The heart of this show is the relationships, and that is something that I don't really see a lot. Like this small town bullshit. I mean, it's a lot of cool stuff going on between Mare and they say Mare's name like more than I've heard a human say another human's name. Mare. But it's a great show, so I recommend it.
Yeah. What else?
I was going to mention that the two movies I saw, The Woman in the Window, which finally came out on Netflix, is horrible.
I heard
it is a train wreck, man. Like you talk about having an amazing cast, production, like Joe Wright. I mean, I think even Tony Gilroy was brought in to do reshoots on this. Like the movie is a mess. I'm not super familiar with the source material, the novel it's based off of, which is a best-selling novel, but I'd be curious if you guys check it out. It's like hyper stylized, obviously trying to do like a Rear Window type thing, and it just does not work. The performances are all over the place. Again, an amazing cast: Amy Adams, Julianne Moore, Gary Oldman, Wyatt Russell, Brian Tyree Henry. I mean, just like Jennifer Jason Leigh. Like, it's just crazy cast.
Wow.
Yeah,
and it is a train wreck. It is a train wreck. It's one of the worst movies I've seen this year.
Yikes.
Or recently. Another horrible movie that I saw is Spiral. I'll mention real quick. I know we talked about Spiral a little bit, like amongst us. We saw it after we recorded it. That was a huge miss for me. And then the other one I saw was Those Who Wish Me Dead, which was one of the HBO Max day and date releases that came out last week or 2 weeks ago. The Angelina Jolie kind of fire jumper crime action thriller, John Barenthal. That was okay. It's kind of felt like one of those like 90s kind of like on those like the cliffhangers type movies. Fine. I the problem is Angelina Jolie. Like, I don't really know where I see her fitting into movies anymore. I don't see character when I watch her. I see Angelina Jolie no matter what she does, which makes me a little worried about her in the Eternals. But
I'm on the same. I mean, it's like she and Kit Harington have a similar thing of like they scowl nice or they look nice in a shot, but like, what do they really bring to these roles that they're getting? But that at least is like a godlike character, so maybe her weird otherness will feel more
That's
believable. But I have that same concern about whether she's going to seem too stilted for me in that.
And I mean, and anything that take away from that movie, I mean, I actually probably would recommend checking that out, especially because it's on HBO Max.
Yeah.
It's just that John Barenthal is like a star. Like, I want to see him I want to see his like ticket just take off. Like, I love him in everything he's in, as small as the role might be, but he's definitely the best part about this movie. And he's got a couple big titles coming out this year, so I'm excited to see what he has coming up next. But Those were the movies that I kind of watched over the last week or so. Which again, Woman in the Window is on Netflix. Those Who Wish Me Dead is on HBO Max and in theaters, and Spiral is in theaters. What about you, Ronald? Anything that you want to mention?
Yeah, there's a couple I guess kind of popped in my head. So the first that I want to say is a Brian Tyree headed indie film called The Outside Story, which is like a romantic comedy about Brian Tyree's character breaking up with a girl, and she's moving out of the house, and in the process of kind of collecting stuff and processing it, he locks himself out of his house and is just stuck in New York to get into adventures. That's really the only way I can describe it. It's fun. It's really very easy to watch, and it's a welcome change from most of the things that I've kind of seen lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's worth checking out. What else did I see? Long Weekend, starring, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Zoe Chow and Finn Whitrock. Okay. So that is a romantic comedy slash drama that is a time travel film. This guy is breaking up with a woman, breaks up with her, is heartbroken, is depressed, and meets a pretty cool woman walking around, and they hang out, and she tells him that she's come from the future. Yes. It is a crazy film that is fun, man. It's another one of those movies that's fun and get you a little weepy. The next one that I saw is a movie starring, she's like a comedic actor, Rachel Sennett and Molly Gordon. The movie Shiva Baby.
Oh, how was that?
Fun. It's another one of those fun movies, man. Like fun. I don't know what, I got kind of lucky. Like I like wrangled up a bunch of films and loved them. Yeah, that's another one. And then what else did I watch? Oh, I watched The Invisible Man for the first time in my human life, and I was fucking blown away for a bunch of reasons. But one of them is like, full confessional, I'm starting to get into spatial sound. I'm starting to get into, like, I have a mini theater setup that I just got. I have a 9-speaker setup with 2 subwoofers, and I watched a film that kind of took advantage of sound being thrown around the room, and my mind was blown away. Just on top of that, just it being a spectacular film that really is just a slice of life, chaotic sort of. It's not a huge film, which I loved. I loved that it just kind of took place within this house, and then another house, and then a hospital, and that's it. And it was fun as fuck. I found myself jumping up and down and screaming and what?
It really is that kind of movie. Like I'm glad you finally got to see. I wish I could have seen that in theaters.
Yes.
That was a movie that really was a victim of the pandemic kind of hitting when it did, because that was one that was like, it still did break out and make a lot of money for what they made that movie on, but that had the opportunity to be like a blowout hit for Blumhouse, like possibly 100 million, like depending on how long it had in theaters. But I wish I could have seen that in theaters. I think we even talked about this on the pod when we started going into quarantine, that like it's just built for the way those scenes are structured in some ways, like that theatrical engagement. And like there's a specific scene in the movie, you know, without spoiling anything, that has, and we talked about this, which has one of the best like shock moments, you know, that I've seen in recent memory, where you could just imagine being in a theater and like how a theater would react to it. It's something I'm jealous that I did not get to experience, but I'm glad you saw it finally and loved it, because oh man, it's one of the best movies of the year last year.
Fun. So fun. It is intense and fun. And I want to see more movies like that. Yeah. So, John, what have you seen?
Oh, that's it for me.
Is that
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something else. Oh, I may have mentioned this also. Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
Come on, man. It's a WB show that should not be good. That is a really fun. It took like a month and a half hiatus, and it's returned with episode 6. So you got like 6 episodes that you can watch right now. It's
Nice.
about a Superman that is dealing with being a parent, and done in a way that really is pretty cool. Like he's stressed the fuck out. Seeing Superman's weakness being not kryptonite, but raising 2 asshole sons. He's just like, I can't take this shit. It's really cool, man. So Superman and Lois.
Cool. I think maybe we will hold this, but I was gonna bring up Mythic Quest, but why don't we sit on that for a little bit, because that season's still rolling out, and we've been able to see the whole season, and there's embargoes on the later episodes, so maybe we'll wait a little bit and maybe talk about that closer to the end of the season.
Talk about the whole thing at once.
Yeah,
absolutely.
as a whole. But in general, if you're not watching Mythic Quest, please start watching Mythic Quest.
Please
find it on Apple TV Plus and give it a look, please.
They're doing something this season. That's all I'm going to say. They're going for something very different from the first season. Especially if you enjoyed the first season, you will love the second season and some. You know,
Yeah,
so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, and we will soon. I'm good. If you guys are good, I think that's a hell of an episode.
Feels
a lot
like
to
an
talk
episode.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they call that. And speaking of episodes, if you want to find past episodes of the podcast, movieschmovie.com, hit the site, takes you to our Podlink page where you can kind of jump into any of the different podcasting apps that you might be subscribing to your podcast through. And if you're not subscribed to Movie Schmovie, please do that.
If you're not, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, maybe you just came across us on Facebook or an Instagram, whatever it is. But just if you could trace it back and subscribe, maybe give us a review, a rating of any kind, or just tell somebody about it. That'd be nice too.
Please
we also have the YouTube channel. If you can find us there, subscribe to the videos, hit the bell so you get alerts when we put new videos /podcasts out. And we have the special that we do on there called Marvel Schmarvel that'll start back up when Loki starts airing on Disney Plus in a couple weeks. Otherwise, it's good talking to you guys as always.
Yeah.
And to all the listeners out there, thank you for listening. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks. Bye.